Hello, how are you doing today? My name is Maggie and I'm an English teacher. And yeah, happy Saturday. I didn't go live last week because if you know in Chile, if any of you live in Chile or if you know someone that lives in Chile, we were having crazy rainstorms last week, and I actually had a leak in my apartment coming from this window. So I had a lot of things to take care of related to that. So this week, everything's good. Actually, my husband got it's called a caulking gun, and it has this like white paste that you use to fill cracks and seal cracks so that, for instance, if you have a shower or a bathtub and water comes out, you seal it with this paste. It's a very specific vocabulary in English, but if you're ever in an English speaking country, it's a weird name, not to be confused with other words, but if you're ever in an English speaking country and you have a leak, now you know what it's called. Yeah, to move on from intermediate English. I mean, there are a few things that you can do to move on from intermediate English. First of all, I would say continuing to consume more content in English is very necessary. And when it comes to listening, when you're at a more intermediate level, you might feel comfortable understanding more general ideas and miss some small details, especially when you're listening to native speakers speaking really quickly. So, related to listening specifically, I really recommend podcasts as a way to improve your listening, especially if you find one where it's like you understand 80% but not 100%, because that way you can go in and check to make sure that you are able to understand certain things. And that's how you learn, right? When you make more mistakes or don't understand everything immediately, that's actually really good for your learning. Another thing when you're at the intermediate level, definitely speaking practice is really necessary. If you can find a class or a conversation group, that's going to help you a lot. Yeah, you have to kind of work on the two things, right? So the fluency is, am I able to continue speaking and put words together, even not focusing on grammar or being perfect? But at the same time, another thing we want to improve is our precision. Like, am I using the right words? Am I saying things correctly? Some people, I recommend you focus more on one versus the other. We all need both. But if you're a person who panics every time you need to use English, maybe focus more on the fluency and just like record yourself speaking for 45 seconds without stopping. And you might need to focus on that part more than the precision if you really freeze when you speak. But if you're a person who talks all the time, but you always recycle the same words, for you, it's probably a better idea to work more on precision. Try to do more noticing tasks. People at the advanced level, a skill that you really need is noticing. So, what do other people say and use in a conversation that I don't really use, even though I understand it? And that's a gap that you have. You have things that you understand, but that you don't use. And you want to try to increase how much you use that other people in your environment are using. So also imitating people is really useful. If you're learning English for work, take a note of everything your coworkers say and just like use it with them. And they won't even notice that you are just speaking like them. Because for all of us, it's just normal how we speak. So if you're surrounded by people and you kind of imitate how they speak, they will think it's normal. I have done this a lot. Yeah, those are my main tips. It's definitely a process because basically when you are intermediate, you can explain yourself in a good way, like you can get by. But for that reason, you have to actively go out of your comfort zone if you want to improve. Like you have to find a new goal, read a book, join a class, like do something else that will force you to actually get better. Which podcast can be helpful? It depends on your level. So if you feel like I speak a little too fast, like you need something a little slower, there's a podcast called, what is it called? Listening Time is a good place to start. This one, Listening Time. If you feel like you understand me a little bit or like 80%, then you could listen to my podcast, which is Charm English Pod. If you need English for work, there's a podcast, I think it's called All Ears English. That one's pretty good too. If you're like, no, this is too slow, I need something like more, there are so many podcasts. I would find one about a topic that you're interested in. So if basically you want to get to the point where instead of only being like an English learner, you're an English user, right? So instead of only listening to podcasts that are teaching you grammar and vocabulary about learning, eventually, I believe a good goal to have is to move towards listening to a podcast that's about a topic that you like. There are podcasts about cooking, gardening. There's one that I like called Normal Gossip, where you just listen to people's gossip. So if anyone has any recommendations for podcasts, definitely write them in the chat. Yeah, maybe I can post a list of recommendations. I did post a list of YouTube channels that I like, but I would also say if you guys the Huberman podcast is pretty good. I haven't listened to that one. Yeah, okay, when it comes to grammar, here's my tip about that. One problem a lot of students have is connecting grammar from the classroom to their real life, right? So, okay, your teacher teaches you every grammar tense, but then when it's your turn to speak, you still don't use the correct grammar. So think about it like this. Grammar is a tool for communication. The reason why you should learn grammar is in order to communicate effectively. If I tell you, for example, I have a lot of money, I don't know, and you're like, oh, okay, so you can buy lunch. And I'm like, oh no, I meant to say I had a lot of money. Today I'm broke, right? So that's a silly example, but like the reason why we use grammar is to be better communicators, to get our message across. So my tip for grammar is every topic that you learn, you need to connect to your real life. So past tense, if you are not very good with the past tense, think about the next time you speak to someone and they ask you, how was your weekend? And practice explaining your weekend and saying how it was in the past tense, right? So every grammar topic, instead of just doing grammar worksheets, always connect it to something you can actually use in your real life. What are all the times when I speak in the past in real life? When I'm talking about my weekend, when I'm in a job interview and I have to explain a situation that happened, when I'm at a party and I'm telling a funny story, when I'm explaining an excuse to a friend about why I didn't show up to their party on time, right? So that's my advice with grammar. Grammar is necessary, but grammar without a lot of exposure won't make sense. So it also happens if a grammar rule looks really impossible for you. You're like, oh, the third conditional, I don't know how to use this. A big reason is because you haven't had enough exposure to what the grammar rule is teaching you. So we always want to accompany grammar with like authentic exposure to the language. For example, if I have a beginner student, like A1, and I explain to them, here is the past tense ed pronunciation, and I give them all the rules, and I explain everything about how verbs are pronounced differently in the past, that student is going to be really overwhelmed. They're not going to have that much to connect my explanation to, and they're going to be like, oh my God, how will I ever remember this? In comparison, if I have a student that's already high intermediate or has a lot of exposure to English, and I tell them, oh, by the way, the ed past tense verbs have 3 different possible pronunciations, they'll be like, oh yeah, I did kind of notice that. Like, I noticed that people use different pronunciations, and it will actually connect to something that they know. So anytime a grammar rule feels really hard to understand, I would take it easy and try to get more exposure to the contexts when people use that, instead of being all worried like, oh, I can't fit it in my brain. It's like, with more exposure, it will make sense. Okay, the meaning of the word beyond. And then I'll bring us to the topic for today. Beyond. Okay, do you guys know Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story? And he goes, to infinity and beyond. So the idea is past something. Also, thank you. I did this. There's a trend called IMAXing, where you try to make the color of your eye pop. And I wanted to do it with light blue, but I realized I didn't have light blue. I just had light green. So I was experimenting today. Yeah, so beyond is past something. For example, if I said, if you were doing your work and you did your work really well. Okay, so your responsibility is to speak to customers. But in addition to speaking to customers, you helped them, and everything that you did was like really thoughtful, and you helped the customers bring their bags to the car, and like you did more even than your responsibility. I could say, oh, he went above and beyond. So he went past what was expected of him. Let me think of another example. If I said, like, I am beyond disappointed in you, it's like, I'm not only disappointed, I am past being disappointed. I'm like more than disappointed in you. Thank you guys. I have the light green. Yeah, exactly. So it could be like, yeah, over something regular. It's like past something. You have a point, and if you go past the point, then it's beyond. Yeah, those are the examples I can think of with beyond. If anyone has another example, please write it in the chat. Yeah, beyond. To infinity and beyond, if any of you guys know Buzz Lightyear. Okay, so I'm going to get us started with the phrasal verbs. This topic should be new to everyone. So maybe if you're like super, super advanced, you will already know everything, and that's okay. You can stay for a good time. But the reason I chose these phrasal verbs is because I wanted a topic beyond just hobbies and everyday sort of phrasal verbs, because we have had classes related to a lot of those things. So this is kind of a new thing. Okay. So to catch on, all of the phrasal verbs we're using today are going to be related to trends. So to catch on is to become popular or widely understood. For example, and I want you to think about if you have an answer to the discussion question at the bottom as well. So, for example, bubble tea caught on all over the world. I don't know if you guys like bubble tea. I love bubble tea. The juicy tapioca balls at the bottom of the tea that you can suck up through your straw. Like, something about that is really fun to me. But I could imagine that for some people that is a difficult texture because it's kind of gummy. Another example. It took a while, but the trend finally caught on. So remember, in English, we have this phrasal verb to catch up, like if you're talking to someone and you want to get updated on what they're saying, you could catch up with someone. But this is different. This is catch on. And catch on means to become popular or widely understood. So yeah, so for example, in this question, what trend do you think will never really catch on no matter how much companies promote it? This could be a tricky question to answer, but if you have any ideas, I'm very curious. You could also use this without trends. You could say, if a person in your office starts calling you Little Bob as a nickname, you could say, the nickname caught on, and now everyone in my office calls me Little Bob. The nickname caught on. So if everyone starts saying the same word or phrase, like 6-7, this really caught on across the world. Everyone started saying that. Latam, especially Chile, is beyond cooked. I don't agree with that. I think, honestly, countries around the world all have their problems. And what I've heard from Chileans that have left Chile is even if there are places that they go and they prefer their lifestyle there, like I have a student that lives in Canada that told me she really prefers living there compared to Chile. And I think, everyone has their preferences. But I've heard a lot of Chileans say they didn't realize how good some things in their culture were until moving. So it kind of makes you appreciate some things too. But I personally believe in moving countries to have more perspective, even if it's for a short bit. That happened to me. I hope one day your teaching will catch on to all English teachers. Oh my goodness. I'm very flattered. Maybe I should I honestly don't. This is something that I hope to discover more with more time as a teacher is like, what is my methodology? There are different methodologies that I use, but I think some people have like one specific methodology that's like theirs, but maybe not having a methodology is a methodology in and of itself. Or like, not that I don't have one, but like being flexible with methodology. Over here, big supermarkets want a cashless society, but I don't think that ideal will catch on. Very good example. I'm gonna pin this example. MVP. Health Halo products should not catch on because they are unhealthy. Yes, what Mangesh said is also a really good example. When you have these products that are like health maxing, but they're actually just a bunch of chemicals, that should maybe not catch on. The past of catch on is caught on. Anytime you guys have a phrasal verb, anytime you guys have a phrasal verb, you're just going to conjugate the first verb. So it will be like, I have caught on, I will catch on, almost like there's no on there. The same way you would use catch in a sentence, we will use caught or catch. It is catching on also. It is kind of like to stick. I would say that in addition, it has an additional meaning versus to stick. It's like it sticks and spreads, right? Because if something sticks, it doesn't imply that more and more people are using it. This is like it's sticking to new people is the idea. Like it's sticking and spreading is to catch on. I would say, what's another thing that will not catch on? Okay, personally, and I don't know if you guys agree with this, I don't think I've gotten the question before if I'm concerned about people using AI teachers and if that would make my profession obsolete. And I personally don't think that will catch on with everyone because I think people will continue to want human interaction. So maybe some people will use AI teachers, but I think it won't catch on with everyone. Okay, we have an aggressive way of playing football should not catch on. Nice. I'm not going to read I have a lot of students from Argentina, so I just want to state my neutrality with such topics, not getting on the hate train. I think having a natural face will catch on all over the world. Yeah, I think that there's kind of like a pendulum, right? So sometimes it's like everyone's getting plastic surgery, and then it's like, wait, we all have the same nose. Maybe it will be more beautiful to like have a unique nose. It happened with eyebrows. I don't know if it was the same in every country, but for example, in the United States, having like really thin eyebrows was popular in the 90s and early 2000s. And then in the mid 2000s, having like really bushy eyebrows was caught on. So it always changes. Okay, to sell out. This has two meanings. There's one that's more literal, like if you are buying something, to sell all available products is to sell out. So if you want to buy a new shirt, but all of the shirts in your size are sold out, there are no more shirts in your size. It also, when referring to a person specifically, or like a group of people, it is to sacrifice your values for money and fame. For example, the concert sold out in 10 minutes. That's the first meaning, the more literal meaning of sold out. The second one, some fans think the brand sold out after signing with the brand. I meant the band. Let me start over. Some fans think the band sold out after signing with a major label. You see, that's why reading out loud is a really good practice, even in our native language, because I don't know, it's easy to trip up over your words. Okay, so I have this question here. Have you ever stopped following a creator or celebrity because you felt like they had sold out, and why or why not? So for example, okay, I can think of someone. There was a creator in Chile, an influencer that I followed in the past because he made funny videos, like comedy kind of videos. But then I noticed that his content started to be all ads. It was like he didn't make any funny videos anymore, and everything was an ad specifically for sunscreen. And I felt like he sold out because he didn't like continue to do what he initially got famous for. He basically changed his content for money, and yeah, it's like he stopped doing what he initially did in order to gain more. So that is to sell out. You could also call a person a sellout, all one word. So remember, when we're using a phrasal verb, when we're using a noun that's derivative from a phrasal verb, we put it all together like one word. So you sold out, spaced apart, or you are a, altogether, sellout. I've seen a lot of okay, this is a really good example because I feel really crazy about this. I've seen a lot of content creators promoting gambling these days. Yes, it seems like they sold, yeah, you could say it seems like they sold their soul, or it seems like they sold out. That also happens. There are some phrasal verbs where when we use the phrasal verb, we don't need to add an object after. One example I can think of this is like, I cleaned my house, or I cleaned up, and it's not necessary to say I cleaned up my house. So this is one of those where if you say I sold my soul, perfect, or I sold out, and it has that kind of same idea. Yeah. No, that I was listening. There's actually a podcast that I stopped listening to because I realized that it was for kind of a younger audience, and they had one of their sponsors was a gambling app. And I think gambling has been catching on with teens, which is really scary, I think. I caught on to the joke 2 hours later. Yeah, that points to another use of catch on, which is like to be able to understand something. Yeah, nice. Okay, to sell out or to be a sellout. Hopefully, none of you guys ever sell out. Many companies are sold out these days because they want to catch on with trends. Yeah, they want to catch on with trends. Maybe like they want to be part of trends, or they want to, yeah, I think that could make sense. Like they want to be part of it. I would usually use catch on more like the trends are catching on. So like because they want to participate in trends that are catching on. Fast and Furious movie franchise sells out their identity of real car racing for too much unrealistic things like going to the moon in a car. Yeah, Okay. My mom always uses this phrase that's really good about that. Like when it comes to a movie or TV show, she says they jumped. I don't know what this comes from. They jumped the shark. I need to look up the origin of that phrase. Hopefully it's not like offensive. I don't know what it means. But basically the idea is when a movie or TV show goes so far that they stop I like when they go past the point of the show being good and just start incorporating a lot of like ridiculous things. That would be they jumped the shark. But unbelievable as phrasal verbs give us the meaning with fewer words. Ooh, I need to be careful with my butterfingers. I almost blocked someone. Okay, unbelievable as phrasal verbs give us the meanings with fewer words. When we don't remember that, we need to use a lot of words to explain things. Yes. Okay, this is something very important to remember. A lot of the time, I get this question of like, okay, but can I just avoid phrasal verbs? Can I not use them? And I would say phrasal verbs, in a sense, are kind of like the heart and soul of English. Like, we can combine pairs of familiar words that you use in other situations, like sell and out, and create this new meaning in a new context. And that's something very important about the English language. It's kind of like a very key to the structure of the language. And of course, you can kind of get by not using them if you are just wanting to have a quick interaction with someone. But yeah, really to immerse yourself in the language, they are a key part of expressing yourself. I stopped following an influencer about 1 year ago because he hadn't told the truth about himself. Are catch up and catch on interchangeable? Not really, because they're used in different ways. So, for example, if a bunch of chocolate stores create a Dubai chocolate, but one store doesn't create their own version of this, you could say, oh, they need to catch up to the competitors. Like, it's like to be at the same level or upgrade or update yourself is to catch up. Versus to catch on is like the trend itself, like the Dubai chocolate, spread and stuck to more people. So they're used in different ways. I never really stopped following a creator because they sold out. At least I can't remember. Okay. Being a sellout is a person who gives up their morals for financial gain. So, for example, the case, like if I just started posting gambling ads for all of you to pay money for this ad so that I would get money, but it doesn't connect to my values as an English teacher, then you could call me a sellout. So it's like the person who uses it's like an opportunistic person, but it's always negative because there's an idea that you are kind of greedy or doing things because you want more money instead of doing things that align with who you are as a person. So like there's a level of inauthenticity and greed connected to being a sellout. Also paid off. Yeah, that's a good one too. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. We have sell out. This is one, let's see, opt out. Okay, this is another one with out. And this is one that you could use in different situations. It means to not participate in something. So, for example, she opted out of social media. It's like she chose to not use social media. Many people are opting out of fast fashion. Maybe they're choosing more ethical brands. If your boss has an optional workshop for you to participate in, you could say, you know what? I would prefer to opt out. I don't want to participate. Yes, politicians are known for selling out. That's a good example. Politicians are known for selling out. The opposite of to opt out is to opt in. So it's like to choose to participate in something. She opted out of the arranged marriage. Okay, good example. My question to all of you is, if you had to opt out of a modern trend forever, what would it be? So if you had to opt out of a modern trend forever, what would it be? I can think of a few trends that I would opt out of. I think one is, I don't know, it became a big thing in the past couple years to use like black lip liner. And I think if you have really pale skin and like the black lip liner, I'm just not a fan of the look. Like, I think maybe some people can pull it off and look good, but personally, I'm going to opt out of that trend because I find it like distracting to have black lip liner and like a light pink shade on your lips. I think I'm going to opt out of that trend. I opted out of using, okay, when we're connecting opt out to something after it, whether it's a gerund, an ing verb, or a noun, we need to connect it with of. So I opt out of using TikTok because I've already had enough with other social networks. That's a good example. Yeah, so some people opt out of using TikTok. I would like to opt out of doom scrolling on social media. I would opt out of validation. Maybe I would opt out of using skinny jeans. Okay, same. I opt out of using those low-rise jeans. I don't know why those were a trend. Also in the 2000s, it was like the really thin eyebrows and the low-rise jeans. I think that those only work on like a body type similar to Paris Hilton. So I have always opted out of the very low rise jeans. Opt out. Yeah. And it's always like I'm choosing to not participate. Okay, I have a similar one. So opt out is I'm choosing not to participate from the get-go, from the beginning. But let me show you, I have another phrasal verb without that's also related to not doing a trend. So in addition to opt out, which is like I'm just not going to participate, we also have, oh, do I have it? Oh my gosh, I think I didn't create a slide about it. That's okay. I was thinking to grow out of a trend. You could also just like, if you in the past used skinny jeans, but now you think, okay, I'm a mom of 4, they are not very comfortable. In the past, I grew out of this trend. So you could also, I'm going to write that question here actually. Is there a trend you have grown out? I'm curious. Is there a trend you have grown out of? Is there a trend you have grown out of? 2 years ago, I opted in Maggie's classes. Yeah, maybe I opted into Maggie's classes. I would use, so opt out connects with of, and then opt in connects with to. I opted into Maggie's classes. Yeah, 2 years. Wow. The time flies. Is there a trend you have grown out of? We also have back out. Yeah, if you want to, maybe if you're scared of participating, you said that you would do something and you choose not to. It's a little different from dropout because dropout is connected to you were part of something a little more formal, like an organization or a school, and then you stopped doing it before the end date. So I would use dropout not really with trends, but more like if you were in a school and you ended up not graduating, like you dropped out of school. Or I would use it in a bit more of a formal situation like that rather than with a trend. It's been years now. I have grown out of posting pictures on Facebook. Yes, I think a lot of people have grown out of using Facebook regularly. I have grown out of night drive parties. Night drive parties. I've grown out of dancing in a disco. Same. I get so tired. I'm like, I can't go to the disco at, I don't know, in the wee hours of the morning with you. I have grown out of that. Okay, I have another one. Let's see. I think a lot of you probably know this phrasal verb, to fit in. So to fit in is to feel accepted or belong in a group. Teenagers often feel pressure to fit in, or maybe you could change your style just to fit in. Remember, just the word fit means that something is the right shape or size for you. So you could say, the shirt that I just bought fits really well. It's my right size. But to fit in has this additional meaning, like, are you a right size or fit for this group of people? So my question is, do trends help people fit in, or do they stop people from expressing themselves? What do you think? Or maybe both. I don't know. Maybe it depends on how positively or negatively you view following trends. We have this. It takes a lot of time to fit in when you are in a different country. True. Yeah. And then I feel like in some ways you always maintain certain parts of your cultural identity, but eventually it gets to a point where you're just like, if you find your group or your people, they stop thinking about you as like not part of the group. So you finally fit in, even if you have your differences. But yeah, I think it's a process. I've grown out of answering my phone. If you want to get in contact with me, text me. Yeah, I have grown out of that because I honestly never answer my phone, because nowadays what happens is it's always a robot and they can record if you say yes or no and like use that voice activation. I don't know, like it really freaks me out because I've heard people tell me that they had spam callers using AI to use their voice to tell their family that they were kidnapped and like needed a ransom. Like there are scammers that can use it. So I just don't even answer my phone for my own safety. I'm like, nothing is important. Like if the government needs me, they email me. But beyond that, whatever. Speaking a different language doesn't help you fit in. True. Like a lot of fitting in is not just the language, it's more like the cultural awareness and knowledge. And I also think who you're trying to fit in with, because there are some people that are easier to fit in with others than with others because you have more in common with them or they're more accepting. I definitely didn't fit in my internship's workplace for more than 6 months. Yeah, this could also be used in like a job environment. Yeah, you might feel like you don't fit in a workplace or a job environment. Yeah, I would say it related to the question, do trends help people fit in or do they stop people from expressing themselves? I think that it really depends on how authentically you actually feel towards the trend, like how much you actually like the trend. For example, there is one creator that I follow on TikTok, and she has this Y2K fashion sense. Y2K is like year 2000. And so she wears all of this stuff that's clearly from the year 2000. But to me, it feels very authentic to her because it's her preferred clothing. Like she loves that. Whereas a lot of people wore the same clothing in the year 2000, but then they grew out of the trend. So I think you can, like you can really authentically like a trend and not just do it to be part of the group. Like I really like bubble tea, even if it weren't as I mean, maybe I heard about it because it was popular. That's the difference. But my advanced AI skills, creativity helped me fit in my internship group chat. My advanced AI skills, creativity. Maybe like my creativity and advanced AI skills, or my advanced AI creativity. I'm trying to think because if you have creativity and skills, both of them are nouns. So you either need to say and or just use one noun. Blend in also works. Yeah. I would say blend in and fit in are both really similar, but there's a little bit of a different emphasis. To fit in is like you do the same things and are part of the same group. To blend in is you seem like everyone else. And those things can be heavily related, but it could depend on what you really want to emphasize. And you might use blend in different ways. Like I was in the party and I just decided I want to blend in. It could be used more like in the background as well, rather than being noticed by people. So blend in could have this additional meaning of being like everyone else, but in an unnoticed way. Whereas fit in doesn't necessarily have that added meaning. It's just like you do the same things as everyone else, but you can still be attention seeking and fit in. It is challenging for late boomers to fit in with groups of Gen Zs. Okay, yeah. Generational differences cause problems to fit in. I don't like coffee, so sometimes instead of I feel not fitted in, I would say I feel like I don't fit in. Or yeah, I would say that. I feel like I don't fit in. Feel like I don't fit in. This word fit in the past is also fit. So when I was in school, I had never fit in. I could use fit in the present or in the past. Do we need something after fit in? It depends. If you just say fit in, period, it's perfect. Like, I never fit in. But if you add something after, similar to opt in, we're going to use to. He fit into the group. So if you're adding an object after fit in, we're going to connect it with the word to. It's so hard to move to a new country because you have to fit in. I opt out of being a whistleblower so that I can fit into every group of people. Okay. The opposite, well, I think it depends, but one opposite of fit in is to stand out. So if you don't fit in, maybe you stand out. You are different or more noticeable than the others. This is, I would say, very common to use in a positive way, like, oh, he really stands out. But you could also say something like, she stands out for all the wrong reasons, which is like she's different in a bad way. I don't know. Bright colors help your outfit stand out. The brand stands out because of its design. So it's more noticeable because of its design. So one way that I like to practice phrasal verbs that I think can help you is learning opposites. And stand out versus fit in some ways are opposites, because if you participate in all the trends, perhaps you fit in. If you don't participate in any trends and you kind of go to the beat of your own drum, you stand out. Do you prefer things that stand out or things that blend in, and why? And you could say blend in or fit in. She stands out for the wrong reasons. Yeah, that's a not very nice thing to say, to stand out. Maybe we need to have a class about insulting people. Not because I want to promote being mean or bullying, but I think it is helpful to understand what people are saying if they're insulting you. If someone's like, you stand out for the wrong reasons, it's like, thank you. No, that's not a compliment. There's a saying that goes, stands out like a sore thumb. Yeah. So that's kind of a crazy saying. Like, if your thumb is sore, maybe you hit it, and then I don't know, like you have a crazy thumb that's looking like this. You could say, oh, it's very noticeable, your sore thumb, or it's like purple. I don't know why, like where that came from, but yeah, if you want to say someone's very noticeable, you can say, she stands out like a sore thumb. I don't think that would be heavily positive either. Thanks to my height, I stand out among my friends. Me too. In a very literal way. Like I'm taller than them. I stand out. I prefer people who stand out to defend people's rights. Yeah. We have a lot of good phrases related to like defending rights. So if you criticize someone and say like, no, that's not okay, like you cannot be racist or homophobic, you could say that you call people out for bad behavior. So calling people out could make you stand out. You speak up when you injustice, injustice, or if you are a famous person and you use your platform to criticize something like an injustice that you see, you could say that he spoke out about the, I don't know, the sexism or something like that. Yeah, agreed. Donald Trump really stands out because of his haircut. I would say his haircut and also his complexion, his skin tone, and his comments. Yeah, and his behavior. Exactly. Take a stand. Yeah, so the word stand is connected to obviously like being on 2 feet, right? But when we defend our beliefs, we stand, right? So to take a stand is connected to defending your beliefs. If you see an injustice or you want to have your voice heard and like be decisive and say no or yes, that is to take a stand. You also might hear the noun form of this word, a stance. So, what is your stance on human rights? It's like, what is your belief or what is your perspective? Is blend in the opposite of stand out? Yeah, I would say blend in is more the opposite of stand out versus fit in. Yeah, because it's like you're noticeable. To stand out means you're noticeable. Let me think of some examples of to stand out. So I could say, for example, at work, I stand out because I'm the youngest worker, but I also have the best performance. So it's like it makes me the most noticeable. Yeah, you could also use stand out for things. You could say the house on the corner of my street really stands out because it's bright yellow and all the other houses are brown. So the house on the edge of my street stands out because it's a bright color. You could also say, ooh, I didn't know that people were going to wear more casual clothing to the wedding. So when I came in a ball gown, I really stood out. And this, another important thing about phrasal verbs is a lot of phrasal verbs use like the first word, the verb itself is very often a Germanic word, like a word with Germanic origin. Of course, you also have some that are of Latin origin, but there are really high frequency ones like get, put, etc. that are going to have irregular past tenses. So very often phrasal verbs, you have to, not only should you practice using them in the present, but you should also practice using them in the past because stand out, but then stood out in the past. And if that's difficult for you to remember, stand and understand have the same conjugation. I understand or I stand in the present. I understood or I stood in the past. So that could help you. Okay, I'm going to choose a different one. This is one that I personally really like, this phrasal verb, because it's very visual. It has a strong visual idea. So to water down, water in English as a verb means to add water to something, right? So if you water your plants, you put water on your plants. And the word down has different possible meanings when it's in a phrasal verb. And one of the meanings that down can add to a phrasal verb is to make it less intense, right? So I can turn up the volume of my music or I can turn it down. So if I'm doing something to a lower degree, maybe hot food can cool down. So it's like decreasing the intensity. Also, thank you guys for your nice comments. I appreciate them. That is to water down. Imagine you have some like really sweet, sour, strong juice, right? You have this juice. I don't know if any of you have had juice like this before. Usually it's like artificial, and you take a sip and you're like, that's like really thick and sweet. It tastes like nectar or something. Maybe you add water to this juice in order to dilute it so that the juice is not as strong and like the flavor, so that the flavor is not as concentrated. We can do that. That's in a very literal way, but we can also water things down beyond that. So to make something weaker, simpler, or less authentic is to water it down. We have an example of with a drink, I had to water down my piscola because it was too strong. Exactly. So some examples when it comes to media and things beyond a beverage are the movie watered down the original story. So if you had some sort of book that had a really strong story, maybe it talked about difficult themes, or it included some cultural elements, something that was really saying a lot. But when they made it into a movie, it was like really commercialized and they removed some of these elements from the story. You could say, the movie watered down the original story. And this is always a negative thing. When it comes to drinks, it could be positive because you're like, this is undrinkable. But when it comes to like a movie or something cultural, it's always negative, right? To water something down so that it's not as pure or not as authentic as it was. When we're using it in the context of drinks, it's neutral, it's not negative. But if we're using it to describe culture or art, it's never a positive thing. It's like the word bland. When we say food has no flavor, it's bland. That's never a positive thing to be like, oh, thanks, the food was really bland. Another example is big companies often water down cultural traditions to sell product. So maybe, for example, it would be difficult for a big company to fully use everything that a culture represents. So they just use one small part of this culture and do it in a very bland commercial way. That is to water down a culture. They had to water down the details of the incident because they were too explicit. Yeah, that's another. We can also water down a message. So one example that I have is if you guys think about a movement in society like the punk movement. The punk movement was a heavily political movement that had a lot of beliefs about society and critiques of society. But when the punk movement starts to be more like a fashion trend, people that just want to stand out with their clothing, you could say that the original message of the punk movement was watered down when more people participated in a very superficial way. So that is to water something down. My question to you is, do social media trends usually celebrate cultures or do they water them down? Do you guys think that, for example, when we have something like everyone's drinking matcha now, or when we have something like it happened earlier this year, a lot of people started calling themselves Chinese and like drinking hot water and saying that they were having a Chinese year. I don't remember exactly where this came from, but it felt like it was a kind of superficial understanding of the culture. I was obliged to water down my attitude so that my school crush could approach me. Oh my gosh. I hope none of you ever have to water down your personalities for a crush. Maybe some people should water it, depending on how intense of a person you are. Yeah, so if you have some sort of really strong pointed message, you could also water it down, making it less strong and pointed. Another example I can think of is I have been following a murder case recently that's very disturbing because I don't know if any of you have heard about it, but there's this singer named David, and he was actually supposed to come to Chile a year or two ago for a concert. I think maybe this year. And the murder case is really disturbing, all of the details. And I've seen a couple of videos that water down some of the really terrible details so that it's a little bit easier to watch them. Because, yeah, I think when you're on social media, it can be intense to see a lot of graphic content that's not watered down. Taco Bell waters down Mexican tacos. True. I have to be honest, I love Mexican tacos and I also love Taco Bell tacos. To me, they're like two different categories of food. Due to fast-paced content on the internet, people's minds started watering down. I don't know, that wouldn't be a very common use of the phrasal verb water down, but it's maybe more poetic sounding. All right, so today we had a lot of different phrasal verbs related to trends. There were a couple others. If you guys want to see the full descriptions of them, I did post them in my channel on here. If you guys go to my page, there's a channel called like Charm English Chat, so you can see there all of the slides with examples, and I'm also going to post this video. But yeah, I'm curious if anyone has a favorite phrasal verb from today. Do you guys have a favorite phrasal verb from the class today? Stand out, to sell out, to blend in, fit into, what were the other ones? To water down. That's my favorite. The water down is similar negative idea to drop the ball expression. I would say that they have different ideas, but both are negative. Because drop the ball is more related to making a mistake, and water down is like you choose to make something less intense. Kendrick Lamar really watered down Drake's aura. That's a good example. He watered down his aura. Next week, I am going on vacation and I will be gone next week, but maybe I can go live because I'm not going to be working. I will be with my cousins and my aunt and uncle. So I'll let you guys know. I need to do a vibe check and see if I can go live next week. I'll let you know. I am planning, hopefully, so I'm also going to see my grandmother, and she has a pretty distinct accent. She's 92, turning 93, and her accent is from like rural Arkansas, but now she lives in Louisiana, so she has like a really thick kind of like there are a lot of different country accents, but she has like a very specific accent, and so I thought, oh, it would be kind of interesting if I recorded her speaking. You guys will be like, what? Thank you guys so much for your nice comments. Your favorite is opt out. Yeah, I also think if you are a person who is like, I'm not going to participate in that, opt out is a good option.